Welcome to Relish Books. Today I am talking about The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner. So, William Faulkner is an author of confusion. And not just because he's difficult for readers to read. He's that way because he wants to be confusing. He does this on purpose. But more about that in a minute. The book, the novel, The Sound and the Fury, I feel like you spend the first good chunk of it trying to kind of figure out what it's about. But what it's about is actually very simple, and the key to knowing what it's about, and I feel like Faulkner is counting on everybody to know the complete Macbeth quote that the novel's title comes from. The title of the novel is the best thing about it. And he took it from Shakespeare. So, just saying. But the full quote from Macbeth is, "Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." And that actually perfectly sums up the entire novel. That quote, it encompasses what it is. It is the family history of, this group of people, this family, and how their lives signify nothing. And there's nothing there's nothing profound in that. There's nothing brilliant in that. The novel's whole weight and I think its fame and all that is all in the way that it's written. And Faulkner is an interesting writer. He is interesting. I don't have to like him, but he's interesting because he is an author who sacrifices many basic principles or several basic principles of good writing for the sake of taking a style to an extreme. I think that is the best way that I can sum up his writing. He takes his particular style to an extreme, and the style is not even that original. It is the very common and very good advice of, the big writing advice is show, don't tell. And I feel like he's the only author that I've ever read who embraced that good advice to the point of abusing it. He takes that so far, and that's his whole style. It's his whole gimmick. When you read this novel, you don't feel like a story's being told so much as a writing experiment is being made. And there's nothing wrong with that. Writers are free to write how they want. But if you want to be a great writer, I don't think reading your work should feel that way. You should feel the power of the story more than anything, and your writing should enhance that rather than detract that. The writing is what this story is all about. Ultimately, if you take away the way that it's written, what is it? There needs to be more than that. I love literary styles. I love writers being creative and beautiful, and they don't have to be easy to read. They don't have to be super easy to understand. But the one big rule of writing that I feel like is more important than pretty much any other is clarity. No matter what genre you're in, no matter what style you're employing, no matter what story you're telling, ultimately you want clarity. And that doesn't have to mean simple. That doesn't have to mean that it's super straightforward, but you do want to be clear. And William Faulkner is the opposite of that. There are good moments in his writing. There are moments that are beautiful. Reading it, if you're really pushing through it, I felt at times in the novel like you would get into a certain flow of writing, a certain flow of thought that was really good. And then it would break off. That's the other thing. It's like he's sacrificing everything for his style, but his style is not consistent. And some of that's definitely on purpose, where he's following the train of his narrator's thoughts. And as the writing reflects the mood of their thoughts. So if they're agitated, there's a lot of broken sentences and beginnings of thoughts with no ending, no punctuation to guide you. It's supposed to feel disorienting, like you're in this person's mind. And I could buy that a lot better if it wasn't so fake. That feels fake. The repeated cut-off sentences, things like that, reflect his style, not his characters, if you know what I mean. This book was similar in many ways, in many, really in all the themes. Pretty much all the themes were the same as in As I Lay Dying, and that book was written even more in this way. And it's like, okay, I get that you're trying to emulate like human thought, but it's not working. That's not the way people think most of the time. Even disoriented people think more coherently than some of the writing, and it's for the purpose of sounding literary. Like I said, there are beautiful moments in the writing. He is very learned. He is smart. He could be a great writer. I don't think he's as great a writer as he's held up to be. I don't think he's as great a writer as he thinks he is, because when you're reading it, when I'm reading a Faulkner novel, what I feel more than anything is a man who's trying too hard. He's trying so hard to be literary. Like I said, at the cost of everything else in the story. It's like, okay, yes, he has some good ideas. He has some interesting people. They're all kind of awful and dark and depressing. But he has some ideas here. But it's like everything is about being literary. Everything is about sounding unique. And I think, again, it just comes across like you're reading it, you're trying to follow it, and it comes across as someone who's trying desperately to be a great writer. And honestly, and this is probably an unpopular opinion with all the Faulkner fans out there, but honestly, it comes off as amateurish at times because he's straining so hard. If he had loosened up a little bit, let some of those more flowing passages work in his stories, he would have been so much better. Because there are moments of goodness in these books. Moments where you're like, oh, that's some like genuinely good writing. Like just normal good writing, if you know what I mean. Instead of this very artificial style that he's pushing on his stories. So yeah, he's definitely unique. I think maybe because most people, not because he's like a super huge genius. He's not. I think because most writers would be afraid to try to do what he did. And that sounds like, oh, then that's a good thing that he did. But no, I think there's a good reason that other writers wouldn't write this way. And like I said, he, he's held up as a great author. So clearly it worked. A lot of people are fans. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I don't think he's actually a genius. I think he's a wannabe genius, in my opinion. And again, the book itself, the story, you'll notice I'm talking a lot less about the story than about the style, and that's entirely because that's where the emphasis is. But, it's the story of this family, And again, the title plays in very well. It's just really a series of horribleness and tragedy. And when it opens, the first perspective, I think there's 4 different perspectives. And then the final one is kind of a omniscient kind of perspective. But it opens from the perspective of a family member who has a severe mental disability. And I kind of liked that it did open with him, because then through all the rest of the narratives, you can remember back to his and see from his perspective. Like, there's more, he can't communicate verbally, so there's a lot more going on in his mind than most of the people around him realize. And so that was helpful to have that as the first narrative. Also, like, when the book opens and you don't know fully what it's going to be about, I think you automatically assume that that's what the title's referring to, because it's being told by this character, the story's being told by this character. But then you actually realize throughout the course of the book, that most of the other family members are actually have less to them than this character that nobody takes into consideration or considers having a mind. So there's some irony there. There's some good thought material there. But yeah, it's these different perspectives of family members, just their family history, the decay of this family. You kind of experience the different family members living out their series of events and ending, however, unhappily for the most part, but not conclusively. It's just events. And I think, like I said, there's not a lot going on. It's all in that you're trying to figure out what's going on, and it's almost like, well, the joke's that nothing is. There's nothing there. It's just a series of events that happen to these people. So, those are my thoughts on The Sound and the Fury. I made it sound like I really didn't like it, and I didn't like it, and I'm not impressed by it, but I was interested reading it. It wasn't as difficult to get through as I thought it would be. I did become interested in where it was going to go. I was wanting there to be like a reveal of something that had been hidden, and there wasn't really. But one thing I will say, I've given his style a hard time. I do like, though, that since he does go to that extreme, I like the way that you can read it and feel like you're never going to be able to figure out who everybody is. It is kind of fun. It's annoying, but it's kind of fun to read something and slowly put together who everybody is just through context, because it's never explained. And it's made extra difficult by the fact that there are multiple different time periods going on and multiple family members with the same name. The male and female Quintons threw me off, which I'm sure if I read it again, I would be like, that's ridiculous. It's clear, but it is hard at first. It was for me. I'm sure there's people out there that it's easy for, but yeah, there's multiple Jasons, multiple Quintons, and no explanation of who anybody is. You just have to figure it out. At the very end of the book, there's a little bit more explanation of like who's who, a little, but at that point it's like, who cares, because none of it meant anything anyway. And that's what I ultimately really don't like about the book. I don't have a use for a novel that's just saying nothing matters, because it's not true. And that's not art to say that nothing matters. A lot of people seem to think that these novels that are just about darkness, just about despair, are very artistic. And if that's truly all that they are about, it's not. That's not art. Art should always reflect something deeper, something higher, in my opinion, obviously. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Faulkner. You can come on here and tell me that he's the greatest writer ever, but I think he's got you fooled. I don't think he was that great. But anyway, those are my thoughts about the book. Let me know if you are a Faulkner fan. I will not judge too much. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.